Hi everyone, welcome to Behind the Runway. Today, Mom and I are going to be talking about the changing landscape of modeling and how it's evolving with social media.
Okay, let's get into it. So, Madeline, you've been modeling for a while.
I have.
How long?
I've been modeling for about 16 years.
That's impossible.
I know.
You're such a child.
How long have you been modeling for?
44 years.
How old were you when
I was
you started?
13.
No,
57. I actually had to do the math. Yes, 44 years since I started. I walked into an agency at 13 and then just kept going.
Damn.
Still going.
And at that time, what was the job of a model compared to kind of like actors and musicians? Like, did they have separate...
Yeah, there was much less gray than there is now. Everybody's sort of in a melting pot now, I find. You can be, actor slash model slash singer slash, YouTube, the whole thing. And at the time, it was very much you were a model. And if you were an actor, you never would have admitted that you did any modeling. It wasn't
so
cool.
I feel like it's still like that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it is because it's the craft, right?
Yeah.
So it just does make sense, and they are very different. There's a very different set of skills to do one and the other. I mean, it's not interchangeable, but it's changed so much. Absolutely, we were models. We were not actors. Our job was very simple: show up, do the job, go home.
Yeah.
There was no self-promotion. There was nothing. You were really silent almost.
Wow, that's so interesting to think, that your job is to just show up, push the clothes, but you don't have a say in anything. You don't have your hand in it. You don't, you can't bring anything to the table. You're brought in to do one specific job, which I suppose it still kind of is that way.
Yeah, definitely.
When it comes to like the actual job of modeling.
Yeah, you're always there to move merchandise. I mean, at the end of the day, we're salespeople.
Yeah.
And instead of using our mouths, we use our frames and our personalities and charisma that to draw the person to the outfit. But, back then we literally did just that. We were not asked about, what else do you do? Do you have multiple streams of income? Do you, are you busy with acting, singing, whatever? It was just in, out, done. And you had very little control over the work itself.
Wow. What a difference it is from, I guess it was maybe 10 years ago that it started to evolve, right?
So I would say with the beginning of social media, at that time we owned Beryl Palmer, the agency, and we had 150 models. And we were noticing as social media started to emerge, so Facebook first, that the models were starting to push their own images and their own jobs forward, which is interesting from both perspectives. It's powerful from a model's perspective, but it's kind of scary from an agent's perspective because you lose the ability to control the image.
Yeah.
So we were starting to see that at least 10 years ago. I would go further back, and actually the models started to do their own thing, and that was really kind of cool to see.
Yeah, I remember at the agency when you guys started to create the website. And it was like, okay, we're going to have all the models up on the website. We're going to be able to, the jobs are going to be able to move quicker, and you don't have to physically send packages in to the other agents, be like, take a look at this model, and actually send their pictures out in the mail. It's like, okay, come to our website. It just makes everything move so much faster. And because of that, I guess just the actual, your ability, the way you show up changes, right? Because it's faster, it's quicker, you have more control over it. I remember when the website was being created and you were picking all the pictures for models.
I know. I actually built that thing myself.
Yeah.
You know me, I'm not a techie, but it had to be done. We had to keep up. We had to get out there. And in the old days, we would actually have couriers coming 15 times a day.
In the olden days.
Well, think about it. I started in the 70s. So that's a lot of changes over the years to see the different styles. I mean, not just in the way the business is run, but even in the styles of who's working, not working. I came in with It was sort of everybody was working. There wasn't a style. There wasn't a supermodel yet.
Oh, that's interesting.
But what about pre-supermodel?
What about like once, you know, when the heroin chic came out, like in the 80s, when those models started to arise as like that A-level model, how did that change your job as, I don't want to say like a B-level model, but you know, you're not quite at that superstar level.
Oh, no, there's no doubt. I've always been just that working girl,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, that day-to-day, do the catalog, do the runway, never a supermodel. I never pretended, but it does change because all of a sudden these superstars are the ones that are, you no longer have an opportunity to get the cover because they've got it.
Yeah.
And that's even more so now. But so it did, it really did. It was like, okay, it brought it to a whole new level.
Yeah.
Where you think, okay, so this is now, how do you become a supermodel?
Yeah, it's not how do you get it's okay, how do I get to that next level?
Yes.
And I mean, I think it's interesting because as models we learn, if we're taught properly, we learn that this is our business, right? We are our own entity. We are our own business. We drive our own momentum forward. You've always taught me that. And it gives you such a power in the sense of like, you don't have to rely on anyone else. It really is you pushing that energy forward. So what an interesting moment to be like, okay, how do I,
what now?
how do not like, oh gosh, I hope it happens. How do I make it happen?
Definitely.
And that kind of comes into like where we're at now with social media, right? And the fact that we as models have our own platforms. We can push our image forward. We can kind of, you know, make it work however we want to.
Right.
And that's changed the job of like a professional model.
Definitely. And to be so careful with our image because the more you do, the more visibility you have. Well, that's a good thing because then you build your following. But at the same time, the more you do, the more paying clients will look and say, oh, well, she's already done that. So you have to be so careful. There's this dance between self-promotion and watering down your image and eliminating paying customers. So that's a real dance. And I think people need to learn that. To really be careful about who you're talking to, how you're getting your image out, and what are you using to actually promote yourself. Is it a product? And if so, can we not just spread that out a little bit to give yourself a chance? So that's a huge conversation with social media influencers who want to also model. How do you dance that dance? It's fascinating. So you've been modeling now for 100 years. How have you seen it change?
It's really interesting with social media and Instagram and Facebook and just being able to move your own business forward. It really is changing the landscape of modeling because, you know, regular women are getting work that models used to be specifically for models. And I love that. Like, I love that we're seeing all this diversity in age, in size, in ethnicity, all of it. Like, we're really, really seeing everybody represented in the modeling world now, which I think it needed to get to that point, and there's still farther that it needs to go. But what's interesting about social is that because you have that platform where you now have an audience, right? Like, if you have even 5,000 followers, 10,000 followers or more, that's more attractive to brands because you actually have your fingers in with their customers. So if you say, listen, this product is amazing, I love it, I use it, they're gonna wanna buy it. And so it's just so for the client, that's so much more attractive. So for models, you know, we're not just like a pretty face anymore. It's like, no, what do you have to say? What do you stand for? What is your messaging? Who do you speak to? What do you bring to the table? And it's so much more, there's so much more wholeness to that. So it's wonderful. And it's also, you have to keep up with it, right? You have to keep up with the times in order to actually still work as a professional model,
and
right?
Be relevant.
And be relevant.
Yes, definitely.
It's really cool.
So what I'm finding too is that over the years, so back into modeling over the last 5 years, so the first few shoots, it was all models. And then there was 1 or 2 social media influencers in there. And then there were 5 in there. And the last shoot I did was for a big brand. I was the only professional model.
Crazy.
So it's gone, whoop,
Yeah, right? Like we go from a time, you call it 20 years ago, when like, you know, actresses didn't even want to be on the cover of magazines.
Oh, goodness gracious, no.
And now it's like everyone's vying for that spot, right?
Yes.
For that same position. And it's really cool. Like it's interesting to see. So our job has changed in the sense of how we show up, what we bring to the table. We have more of a voice now, which when you were saying before, you know, you just walk into a job and you don't
offer anything.
Yeah, except moving the clothes forward, and it's so different now. So I really love that. But you know, if you're not with it, then you could get lost and tossed aside.
Absolutely. So, what are your tips for people who are thinking about getting into modeling and do have even just a small following? What do you do? How do you go forward?
So it's interesting because you can kind of stick with the influencer route, right? You can choose to go that route and build your following, build your audience, and build your messaging, all of that sort of stuff. And that's great. And I think that's a whole other podcast.
Right.
We could really get into brand
yes,
ambassadorship,
yes.
affiliates, all of that. We could really get into that. And the other side is working with an agency, right? And getting in with a professional agency, going that route. So there's pros and cons to both, really. I've done both. We've experienced both. So it really is just choosing your medium. You know, no matter what, it's your work. Like you have to push your business forward. You have to make it happen yourself. You can't rely on an agent, right?
No, absolutely not.
You can't just sign with an agency and sit back.
And
go, okay, cool.
Drink coffee.
Like I'm with an agency now. Like,
it's all gonna happen.
It's all gonna happen for me.
I've been discovered.
Exactly. You actually still have to understand the business.
Yes.
Know how to show up. Get the job again. Like it's not just getting the job the first time, it's how do I get repeat work, right? And how do I get it again and again? And
build that loyalty.
That's
from
a
the
whole
client.
other strategy.
Yes.
So it's just choosing your medium, figuring out how you want to show up in the modeling world, and then learning everything you can about that, finding the best of the best to work with, you know, the best agencies, the best photographers, the best brands to align.
The best teams, so important.
Yeah, to align yourself with, and working with people to make that happen for yourself. So that's my biggest tip is just really pick one and go for it. Dive into it, because you can't go wrong either way. If you do choose the social media route, then you're going to have to put so much time and energy into that, keeping up with how social media changes from day to day. And what would your one tip be for a new model getting into the industry or someone who's looking to kind of build in the fashion modeling world?
Oh, such a good question. Definitely research. Find out, who are the best agents? Who are the best photographers? Who are the people that you want to work with? Because it's so muddy. You know, when you go online, you start looking. It's really, really tough to decipher who are the best because everybody looks great. Everybody presents themselves really well. So who's really the best? Start there. And work with the best photographers, best makeup artists, because they're all connected and they can help you find the best agencies. So everyone knows everyone and they all work together. So do your research, like really do your due diligence and make sure that the route that you take is the absolute fastest, most legitimate way of getting into the business. That would be my one tip.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Behind the Runway, where we really dug into the changing landscape of modeling, how it's changed over time, the direction that it's going with social media influencers, and how that pertains to professional models. That's really the world that we are experiencing and living in right now. So we wanted to share that with you, and we will see you next time on Behind the Runway.